Well, it's 6:01, so we might as well get started. And good evening, council, directors, staff members, members of the press as well, and the general public. So welcome to our virtual council meeting for May the 19th. I'll ask the clerk for the roll call, please.
Good evening, Your Worship. All members are present.
Thank you very much. Item number 3 is a review of revisions or deletions to the agenda. They need to be added or deleted from the agenda at this point. If not, I got a motion moved by Councilor Gelly, second by Councilor Ferrier. Be it resolved the City Council approves the agenda as printed. Anybody opposed to that motion? Being none, is there any disclosure of pecuniary interest or general nature tonight? Hearing none, and just to let everybody know from the general public, we have a chat box there. If you do have questions for the question periods, you can put your questions in the chat box, and then our directors will read those questions out to us. Item number 6 is a review and adoption of the council minutes. And I got a motion moved by Councilor Foley, second by Councilor Rowland. Be it resolved the City Council approves the following minutes as printed. A, the special meeting of council held on May the 4th, 2020. And B, the regular meeting of council held on May the 5th, 2020. So, anybody, any questions about those two sets of minutes? Anybody opposed to that motion? So that motion carried. So, tonight we have a number of public meetings, and they're pursuant to the Planning Act and Black Mirror statutes. The first one is the potential disposition of land regarding the Hillsbury Public Library at 545 Lakeshore Road. And the purpose of the meeting is the city is considering the disposition of the Hillsbury Public Library. So, the meeting also allows the public to provide comments on the proposed disposition prior to council making a decision. So I now declare this to be an open public meeting and request the clerk, Logan DeLonge, to outline the details of the proposed disposition. Logan, you're on.
Thank you, Your Worship. So, beginning the presentation for the Hillsbury Public Library, located at 545 Lakeshore Road. Beginning with the background. In the 1920s, the building was constructed of concrete block walls and concrete foundations. The building's original use was industrial or manufacturing or warehouse. June 1972, the Hillsbury Library building was donated by the former mayor, John McKay-Clement, and there is a stipulation on title stating that if it was no longer used as a library, the building would revert back to the heirs of the estate. The city has been in contact with Mayor McKay-Clement's heir, and he has decided to donate the building to the city. January 2014, the city received a library building condition survey from Mitchell Architects. On May 15, 2019, the Public Library Board recommended consolidating the library services under one roof for the New Lickford Medical Center, while providing a satellite location in Hillsbury. Council supported this recommendation on June 4th of 2019. On August the 13th, 2019, Council adopted bylaw number 2019-131 to enter into an agreement with the Nest Building Group for upgrades to the former New Lickford Medical Center for the relocation of the public library with a tentative opening date of early July of this year. On December 17th, 2019, Council adopted bylaw 2019-189 to enter into a memorandum of understanding with Northern College, Hillsbury campus, to provide library services with a satellite location. The satellite office at Northern College is tentatively scheduled to open in June 2020, and work has been ongoing since this time. So the next slide is an aerial view of the Hillsbury Library fronting on Lakeshore Road South. The map is produced for illustration purposes only. The next slide outlines a Facebook summary. So there was a notice of public libraries for New Lickford and Hillsbury Public Libraries. It was a joint posting. And as of Friday, May 15th, 2020 at 12 o'clock noon, these were the following statistics that were provided. So the posting gained 7,741 views, 2,243 engagements. The post was shared 56 times and with 357 reactions. A total number of comments were 170, and out of those, 48 comments were viewed on the city's Facebook page. So with the Facebook questions that were summarized from the posting, we had several questions. So question number 1 was that I was under the assumption that the Hilleberry Library would go back to the family that donated the building. The following response was provided. The Hilleberry Library building was donated by the former Mayor John McHale-Clement. There is a stipulation on title stating if it was no longer used as a library, that it would revert back to the heirs of the estate. The city has been in contact with Mayor McHale-Clement's heir, and he's decided to give it back to the city. Next slide, please. Thank you. So the Facebook comment summary, as of Friday, May 15th, 2020 at 12 o'clock noon, that out of the 48 comments that were viewed on the city's Facebook page, they were categorized into the following. 2 were made were due to accessibility. 4 comments were made with the condition of the building in New Lisbon. 11 comments were made with respect to the future location of the library or the Hilleberry Medical Center. 3 comments were specific to the Hilleberry Library. 5 were with respect to the historical designation on the New Lisbon branch, and there were 23 general comments. Next slide, please. Thank you. For additional information, prior to the disposition, the city would need to investigate the easement that provides legal access over the neighboring lands. And the next steps in this process would be for council to consider accepting additional written comments up until Tuesday, June 2nd, 2020, and that council consider additional comments and public input at the June 2nd meeting. And then a staff would prepare a follow-up report for consideration at the June 16th, 2020 meeting. And that concludes the presentation. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Logan. Appreciate that presentation there. So, we got quite a number of different presentations tonight, so I now invite Betty Stone to provide her presentation. And just to remind you got about 10 minutes limit on your presentation, Betty, so the microphone is yours.
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Can you still hear me?
Yes, I can.
Okay, I'll go ahead. Some of my comments may appear redundant in light of the city clerk's presentation. However, before actually commencing the presentation, I wish to, your worship, members of council, fellow citizens, just digress briefly and publicly express my appreciation to both the city clerk and city manager who facilitated my request for specific documents in order that I might review them prior to addressing you this evening. That said, these are unusual and uncertain times and circumstances, and as such, for council to attempt to commence the process of a speedy divestment of the 2 specific properties previously used as libraries by the corporation, I have some significant concerns, some of which were just addressed by Logan, but there are still concerns that remain. I believe that these actions by the corporation may be viewed as less than prudent, given the speed with which they are occurring. Before council's consideration of divestment, I'm of the personal opinion that there should be an examination of possible repurposing and reutilization that would be congruent with the demographic complexity of the needs of citizens in this area. I note with some concern that the master plan for recreation is not yet in complete draft form and is yet to receive comment by the public or consideration by council. Further, the parameters of leisure and cultural activities have yet to be explored in respect to the broader considerations of community activities and engagement. Nor does there appear to be any consideration of the correlation and congruency between the official plan and the divestment of an accessible building in Haileybury and that of the only heritage designated building in New Liskeard. I would strongly suggest that there is an absence of congruency in respect to the corporation's legally approved official plan and the proposed divestment of these two properties without a prior undertaking of a full and complete review of how the continued utilization of these two properties could advance the objectives of this corporation in addressing the needs of citizens. In my personal opinion, what also appears to not yet be in place and is significantly lacking is a vision that is shared by everyone as to how this unique geographic area can retain its senior citizens and reduce out-migration of both youth and seniors. Because without this vision, housing prices will continue to decline along with population and subsequently cause city taxation revenue from both commercial and residential sources to also decline. In my personal opinion, a vibrant, caring, accessible community occurs and is supported by a city council that directs the affairs of the corporation in such a manner that a shared common vision is achieved through congruency of goals and actions. This is a unique opportunity for council to demonstrate excellence through a process of relevant review and renewal, rather than engage in just a simple, expedient divestment of what are actually irreplaceable assets of the corporation. Some relevant citations from the official plan. I'm just going to quote the specific items under Community Development, page 12, section 6, to conserve natural and cultural heritage resources. Under Conservation and Architectural Heritage, page 22, items 7, A, B, and C. Under Healthcare, page 34, section 5, item 12. Adaptive reuse of infrastructure, page 36, section 5, item 14. Under Economic Development, page 37, section 6, page 39, item 20, inclusivity. Further, but not by any means the last, section 7, under Recreation, Culture, and Education, I quote, active and passive recreational facilities and activities tailored to all ages, end quote. The only two words that are missing from that are all abilities. I wish to thank you for your time this evening, trusting that my comments will create a necessity of further reflection and reconsideration of a process which on the surface, publicly, I believe, appears to be quite flawed in the absence of true, significant, and complete public engagement. When we speak of a vision for this area, we have an incredible opportunity at this time, in light of everything that is going on in this area and the world, to create something that is unique, welcoming, and addresses fully and completely the needs of everyone in this entire area, and to potentially have divestment of both of these properties without an absolute total review of what other opportunities these properties could be used for, I think is a very sad commentary. And I trust that City Council will be able to look beyond the obvious in terms of expediency and start the creation of a bright new future in respect of planning for this area. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you, Betty. I've got my notes here, and Logan's got her note. Plus, we're recording all this meeting tonight as well, so we've got all your comments on being recorded tonight. So we'll definitely have a look at this as council, and then we'll open it up for any other comments from members of the public that may have put a question in our chat box. Is there any questions at this point, Brad or Shelley? from the public?
We have one comment from Dan Dawson. He's agreeing that both the old library buildings should be put up for sale. Only condition is that they be sold or rented at fair market value with no more giveaways. The taxpayers can't afford to give away city assets anymore. Maybe the Hellebury building could be offered to the Temiskaming Art Gallery for a fair price or rent.
Okay, thanks, Shelley. Any other questions in the chat box? Hearing none, I guess I'll ask another members of council if they want to any comments on this particular issue.
Hey, Your Worship, it's Jeff. I do want to make a few comments, and I do thank members of the public for their comments. I think with regards to this 80 sale of these, not necessarily sure I agree with those words. We did public consultations, for a few months. We held a number of them throughout, Hellebury, New Liskeard, and Diamond to make sure that we did get a voice from our ratepayers on that. And I think when we look at the state of those buildings and we look at the money that was spent to get the engineering reports, we clearly understand the challenges that we have in both of those buildings, which is why, it was a difficult decision when we talked about moving the location and spending some money to utilize an existing building that we did have in New Liskeard, which was the medical center. So this is not something that was taken lightly. This is not something that we've ignored, and all of a sudden are just trying to sweep something under the carpet and get rid of some assets. It's something that we have, done a lot of due diligence around. So those are just my comments. I think, for sure, there's a number of things that we're doing, with regards to recreation, and I take those comments, that we can review those and see if there is opportunity for repurpose of those facilities. But with the amalgamation of the three municipalities, we have more assets than we're utilizing today. And so just my comments. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Ferrier. Councilor Rowan, you're next.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor Kidd. I sit on the library board with Councilor Ferrier, so I appreciate his comments. Maybe I'll save mine until section 7.2 after the next one on the listed public library.
Okay. Councilor MacArthur.
Yes, thank you very much for your questions. If we were getting rid of both libraries and not even having a library, I could hear you on that one. But we've made the provisions of one in New Liskeard and teaming up with Northern College. And it comes down to taxpayers paying for the keep of these buildings. And we do, as Jeff mentioned, we do have a lot of buildings throughout the three towns. And some of them are costing money and we're not even using them. We've rented the upstairs in the Liskeard Arena out because we don't get as much action as far as weddings and different events. So at the end of the day, it comes down to dollars and cents and keeping taxpayers fairly happy by keeping taxes down. And I hear what the last question was something to do with, or comment was the art gallery. I think the art gallery is a beautiful building. The intention was to put them in the city hall. I think they've got a great location, as I said, and for them to want another one, I don't think they, personally don't think they could afford to have two buildings. I think they're happy with what they have, but at the end of the day, it's the bottom line is costing, and that's where I have to decide when I vote on something, is looking at what it's going to cost the taxpayers to keep these buildings, on our payroll or on the city books.
And actually, the art gallery actually has a second location across from the Scotiabank in Hellebury as well, so they've already got two locations there. Good. Anyways, we're gonna allow 2 more weeks, comments, so if people do have comments, they can write them in to this council before June the 2nd, and we'll have discussions again second. I'll ask the, Director of Corporate Services, Shelley, if you have any more questions in the chat box at this point.
No, there are none.
Okay. So, any other comments from council? Yes, Councilor Hewitt.
Yeah. First off, Betty, I appreciate for you to take the time to give this some serious thought and to look at this from all aspects. I myself have had a difficult time with the fact that this has been a heritage building and a landmark, looking at architecture, inclusivity, the purpose of the building, and the fact that, you know, for a few years, we've been really talking about that community hub. And we know that when it comes to all kinds of challenges and it's the community that comes together in difficulty like this that really makes a difference and maintains a community and a municipality. So I certainly agree with you that we need to have more of a long-term vision, that the public has a right to speak up, and more formally, yes, we had opportunities for individuals to speak up, but that vision and that formality perhaps needs to be looked at. When we let go of a landmark like this, especially with looking at our demographics and the services that were held at our libraries, I think that you know, we do a disservice to our taxpayers. It's not just about the money; it's about our community and keeping us all together. So I really appreciate your presentation, and I agree we need to have more consultations moving forward without just a estimate. So I appreciate that, Betty. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councilor Hewitt. So no other comments. I think I'll now declare this public meeting to be closed, and council will give consideration to all the comments tonight, and also will consider any new comments that come before the June 2nd regular meeting. And moving on.
Excuse me.
Yes.
Mayor Kidd?
Who's on the line?
It's Dick Farrow on the line.
Yeah.
Mayor Kidd, I had sent in a request to speak tonight last week. And
yeah, we're going with Dick. Excuse me, Dick.
Yeah.
We're just getting into the municipal library presentation right now, so we'll get Logan to do the presentation, and then you'll be the next speaker regarding the municipal library. Okay? Just give us about
okay.
3 or 4 minutes
No
here.
problem at all.
Okay, great.
Thank you.
No problem. So now we'll move on to item 7.2, which is the purpose of this public meeting is to present the council and the public details related to the proposed disposition of land being the New Lisbon Public Library at 50 Whitewood Avenue. And the meeting also allows the public to provide comments on the proposed disposition prior to council making a decision. So I now declare this to be an open public meeting and request the clerk, Logan Belanger, to outline the details of the proposed disposition of the New Lisbon Library. Logan, you're on.
Thank you very much. So again, I'm going to be reviewing the presentation for the potential disposition of municipal land for the New Lisbon Library branch. So to begin with some background for the library, in 1910, the New Lisbon Public Library was constructed. In January 1985, it was designated by the town of New Lisbon as a property of architectural and historical value under the Ontario Heritage Act. This municipal designation was registered on title at the Lands Registry Office. In January 2014, the city received a library building condition survey from Mitchell Architects. The report outlines multiple recommendations, including the stabilization of the building, accessibility upgrades, and lack of space requirements for a library. Also recommended was that the parapet structure above the main entrance should be constructed and rebuilt due to signs of bulging, or it's no longer vertical. On February 25th, 2016, the New Lisbon Library Building Committee recommended proceeding with an RFP to engage an engineer for the design and cost estimates to stabilize the New Lisbon Library. On May 17th, 2016, there was an RFP for engineering services closed. Due to limited submissions and high costs, the library board committee opted to cancel the building stabilization RFP and recommended reissuing an RFP for the repair of the parapet wall and other minor repairs. On August 2nd, 2016, work was awarded to EXP Services for engineering services for the investigation of the parapet. September 19th, 2017, work was awarded to Rivard Brothers for the repair of the parapet wall to an upset limit of $188,897.50, which was partially funded through the Canada 150 with $100,000. Alternative repairs were considered, however, the library's municipal heritage designation would have required removal. On April 2018, based on significant costs to repair the library, create barrier-free features, and to maintain the municipal heritage designation, public consultations were held to gather information on the future of the library services in the community. On April 3rd, 2018, Council approved the request to hire an architectural firm, Mitchell Jensen Architects, to investigate the feasibility of relocating the New Liskeard Library to the former New Liskeard Medical Center, or 285 Whitewood Avenue. On May 15, 2019, the Public Library Board recommended consolidating library services under one roof, or the New Liskeard Medical Center, while providing a satellite location in Hillsbury, and Council supported this recommendation on June 4th, 2019. On August 13, 2019, Council adopted bylaw number 2019-131 to enter into agreement with the Vanessa Building Group for upgrades to the former New Liskeard Medical Center for the relocation of the public library, with the tentative opening date in early July. And on December 17, 2019, Council adopted bylaw number 2019-189 to enter into a memorandum of understanding with Southern College Hillsbury campus to provide library services at the satellite location. Next slide, please. Thank you. So the diagram that you have in front of you is based on a plan of subdivision M-2MD. So the library and the cenotaph are located on parcel 1487 NNC on lot 29 to 32 of the plan, which is located at the corner of Whitewood Avenue and Wellington Street. The proposed sale does not include the cenotaph. The next slide shows an aerial image of that parcel for illustrative purposes. The following is a Facebook summary, again, similar to the Hillsbury posting, or the joint public meeting notice for the potential disposition of both libraries as of Friday, May 15th, 2020 at 12 o'clock noon. For the views totaled 7,741, total engagement of 2,243, shares of 66, reactions of 357, for a total number of comments were 170, and 48 of those comments were viewed to the page.
I was just asked if somebody's not speaking, could they please mute their phones? We got some feedback coming back through the phones as well. So just, if you're not speaking, could you please mute your phones? Go ahead, Logan, sorry.
Oh, thank you. So for the next slide outlines some Facebook questions that provides a synopsis of the 48. So the first question was, isn't Liskeard's historical landmark? The response provided was the New Liskeard Library was designated by the town of New Liskeard in 1985 as a property of archaeological and historical value under the Ontario Heritage Act. This municipal designation was registered on title at the Land Titles Office. Question number 2 is, I don't like the idea of selling local libraries. Can they be used to promote tourism somehow or another function? Question 3, why was there no talk of these issues with the library thinking until last year? During a time when people cannot get out to a public meeting, I would like to see a motion that this be tabled for 1 year to have a regular public meeting. The building has been there for so long, so it's slide a sales through when people are at a disadvantage. Not everyone is on social media. The response provided to question number 3 was in January of 2014, the city received a library building condition survey from Mitchell Architects, and within this report there were multiple recommendations including the stabilization of the building, accessibility upgrades, and the lack of space requirements for a library. Since then, we have had multiple discussions with the library board and about the above mentioned report and how to proceed with some of the recommendations. As part of the 2018 budget deliberations, Council approved the request for city staff to hire an architectural firm to look at the costs associated with relocating the New Liskeard Library to the former New Liskeard Medical Center located at 285 Whitewood Avenue. Question number 4. I am wondering, please correct me if I don't have this right. I believe the building has a heritage or historical designation that prevented the city from adding a handicap or accessibility entrance, and then it would change the building somehow. Will this designation continue should the city sell the building? The response provided to question number 4 was, the New Liskeard Library was designated by the town of New Liskeard under the Ontario Heritage Act in January 1985. The designation was registered on title and remains with the building whether the city owns it or not. There is nothing in the designation bylaw that would prevent interior renovations. However, the exterior of the building and its architectural features must remain intact. You are correct that the installation of an accessible entrance at the front of the building would have been contrary to the intent of maintaining the heritage characteristics of the building's facade. We explored the possibility of an elevator entrance at the rear of the building. However, there were space limitations and cost considerations that prevented this option from being explored further. Question number 5. Where are the lot lines on the property? The response to question number 5 was the library and the cenotaph are located on lots 29 to 32 of this plan M22ND at the corner of Whitewood Avenue and Wellington Street. The proposed sale would not include the cenotaph part. And also, with respect to questions, we also had comments. So this slide provides a synopsis of those comments. Comment number 1, the Ontario Association of Architects notes that the New Liskeard Carnegie Public Library is one of the few that has remained true to its original plan. Of all the libraries built with this association to the Carnegie Foundation, it is our library that is pictured recognizing this important fact. Comment number 2 is I agree it should be tabled to a later date. So the next slide outlines a comment summary. So the comments that were shown on the city's Facebook page, 48 in total, were categorized into the following. So there were 2 comments received with respect to accessibility, 4 comments regarding the condition of the building in New Liskeard. 11 comments were received with respect to future location of the library or the New Liskeard Medical Center. 3 comments were received with respect to the Hillsbury Library. 5 were received with respect to the historical designation, and there was 23 general comments. For additional information, prior to disposition, the city would need to determine the start time for the library in relation to lot 29 to 32 on parcel 1487 previously illustrated. The intent is for this disposition is the library building only and not the cenotaph. The municipal heritage designation would also remain in place and would include limitations on any future owners with respect to renovations to the building. Next step would be accepting additional written comments up until June 2nd, 2020, and that recommends that council consider these additional comments and public input at the June 2nd, 2020 regular council meeting, and for staff to prepare a follow-up report for council consideration on June the 16th. Thank you.
Thank you, Rick. Well, we appreciate that presentation as well. We do have 3 people that are registered to make presentations tonight. We have Dick Pearl, we have Ryan Primrose, and we have Claire Shepardson. So I'll ask Dick Pearl to use your microphone and we'll listen to your presentation, Dick.
Thank you, Carmen. I'm, I guess, somewhat sitting in tonight. Although I'm a member of the Little Clay Belt Museum Board, it's our chairperson up until just this was Mark Villeneuve, and she would have spoke tonight and can certainly speak with more of the history, but for family reasons, she's not available tonight. So I'm standing in, and hopefully I can pass on the feelings of the Little Clay Belt Museum. We the Little Clay Belt Museum, of course, is located out at the Cow, and we have our physical presence there. We have some great displays, and we get visitors that do come in to take those in and enjoy them. But more importantly, I guess, for many of us, is the work that the museum does in collecting the history of the area through the Clay Belt Chronicles that we do. And it's a publication that's just come out with its 9th edition, and it takes in comments from just general Joes who lived in the area about their remembrance of living in the area and the entire area. So and our comments are only with regards to the New Lister Public Library, because we really don't have a lot of information, or didn't have a lot of information on the Haileybury unit. I can say, listening to Betty's comments earlier, that we would agree almost 100% with everything that she said. This is a very difficult time for everybody, everywhere in the world. It's very difficult for the general public to attend a council meeting tonight so that you can hear the expression of those people about the loss of these buildings. And so I'm not sure that this is the time that such a crucial decision should be made. The New Lister Library, you're correct, is a Carnegie Library. Only 3 were built in Northern Ontario, 2 St. Marie, North Bay, and New Lister. And we've had that building as the centerpiece of the downtown area of New Lister. It's a building that we received many comments on from visitors to our area, the beauty of the building and the historical significance of it being a Carnegie Library. We feel that maybe council, and I understand that you have reached out to the public in an attempt to get their feelings. And the Council Ferrier, I know the process that you indicate has been going on, but sometimes, you know, if people just don't get the message, whether it's because they didn't pick up the paper or they're not into the social media sites that might provide that. And so it almost takes that huge kick in the pants to say, you're going to lose this building, to engage people and to get them to come out and truly express the way they feel about it. So we would very much encourage council to hold off on this decision until we can get into a time where people have better access to reach council to express the true feelings of what people think about the loss of this building. Because I suppose if you do put it up for sale, there's nothing stopping somebody from tearing the building down and putting a parking lot up. And it would be a sad commentary on the way we treat the history of our area. So I don't have all the information on the costs involved with renovations to the library that are required. But I certainly agree with Betty that, you know, we're not in any position right now to determine what life is going to be like on the other side of COVID-19. It's going to change the world. For how long, we don't know. But the worst thing we can do is to get rid of one of the best assets that we have. Quite a few years ago, I'm going to say in the range of 25 to 30 years ago, we had a group of foreign dignitaries come through the area that were looking at potential building sites for their business. And you know, at that time, they said, yes, you know what, we know all about your roads, your lot, the servicing you could provide. But the most important thing for us comes down to three things. If we're going to build in your area, we want to know that we have health care for our employees that are going to be coming here. We want to know that they're going to have ideal education, and we want to know what recreation facilities they're going to have. Because we only have them at work for 8 hours. We want them to be happy employees in this area. Losing the library takes away a very significant part of the heart and soul of downtown New Lisbon. So I would encourage, I understand, I realize that costs are something that council has to grapple with each and every day. But surely there can be other avenues explored to see if somehow we can retain this extremely important part of our history. So I thank you for the time this evening, and I hope that you can see the light to extend this decision until we can meet face to face and we can all give you our true feelings of how we feel about losing this building. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Rep. Dick. Just want to make one correction in one of your comments there. The building, whether it's sold or not, it cannot be torn down. I mean, that outside facade of that building cannot be torn down. That is it's a heritage designation. If somebody does buy that, they cannot tear it down and turn it into parking lot. It has to be maintained as the outside structure of that building there. So just want to make that one clarification there. So, well, thank you for your presentation, and we'll probably move on to Brian Primrose and.
Mayor Kidd,
yes.
Thank you for letting me know that torn down. I suppose what that does is pose another problem, that if that restriction is on and the cost to renovate are so high, it would seem that the possibility of a potential buyer would be very slim, and it would be almost worse to have that happen and have the building sit as a vacant building and eventually deteriorate to the point where it's an eyesore. So thank you very much for your comment.
Yep. Well, thank you, Dick. Appreciate your comment there, and everything's being recorded, so we've got all your comments. So thank you. Ryan Primrose, got some comments?
Hey, good afternoon. Yes, hello.
We can hear you, yes.
Good afternoon, Mayor. Okay, perfect. Good afternoon, Mayor, council members, and residents of Temiskaming Shores. My name is Ryan Primrose, one of the directors of the Ontario Centre for Archaeological Research and Education, also known as OCARE. I'd like to take the time to thank you for this opportunity to speak today. OCARE is a not-for-profit heritage organization whose mandate is to discover, develop, and preserve Ontario's heritage through community participation, outreach, and education. The organization has been active since 2005 and formally incorporated as a not-for-profit in 2019, and is currently undergoing a charitable status review. OCARE's aim is to develop a new cultural space from which to provide services, from having publicly accessible access to artifact collections and information, providing support to landowners who make inadvertent discoveries, and to involve the public both through presentations and their direct involvement in the archaeological process through exploration, excavation, and analysis. OCare would like this new cultural space to be the Carnegie Library in New Liskeard. The library throughout its life has historically kept with Andrew Carnegie's goal of providing a free public space in which every person may, in their own way, participate freely in the exchange of information. OCare will maintain Carnegie's intent through its access, collections, and programming. We understand the current need for the building to be repaired, to be maintained, and to be made accessible. We've been pursuing funding through the federal program Cultural Spaces Canada and have received positive feedback to date. OCare has a budget and strategic plan developed. And as part of achieving the goals of sustainability, we envision the following division of space. The upper floor will be used as the center itself, with the publicly accessible space, collections, and research facilities. And located downstairs will be office space for rent available to local business and other not-for-profits. It's expected that this revenue will suffice to supply the operational costs of the building. Overall, OCare is committed to preserving the Carnegie Building as a heritage building and as a public space without ratepayer burden. And if OCare should ever cease operations, the ownership, we commit to revert back to the city. And this will be a community hub where people can interact with the past and directly in the archaeological process. It'll help build the community and draw others to the city from elsewhere. Structural and accessibility issues will be remedied, and OCare will retain the former library's character, historical significance, and original purpose, which was to provide an accessible community space. And to that, I'd like to thank you for your consideration, and we will be able to provide any documentation you require and look forward to your conversations. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Primrose. There, I appreciate your presentation there. It's very interesting. We definitely want to stay in touch there and see get some more details worked out there as well. So I think we'll carry on to the last presentation, then we'll go back to questions, general questions there. So I'll ask Claire Shepardson to make your comments, Claire.
All right, I will. A lot of my questions that I originally had are already redundant and have already been answered, so I'm going to skip over some of those. The first one that I had was whether or not the library would maintain its heritage status, and that's already been answered. The other part of my concern has already been discussed, and that is if there is some way in which the city could repurpose the building for departments that could be moved into it, similar to the way your maintenance department is, and operate in the building and still with communications be in contact with City Hall. I like the idea of Brian Primrose that just mentioned. That's a wonderful opportunity, and if that can work, that'd be good. So my question there is that the use of the building should be reconsidered. I was very much concerned that the building has now lasted for 110 years, and I know it would cost thousands and thousands of dollars to stabilize it or whatever, but even if nothing was done, would it not still stand up for another 50 or 60 years? Which means that something with a lot of cost if they were willing to put up with the cracks and the leaky roofs and whatever. So I would suspect that it would still stand for a long time if it continued to be used. About the next idea I had about the whole thing was the idea about 10 or 15 years ago the city established its Heritage Committee, and I happened to be a founding member of that and was on that committee for the next 8 or 10 years. And the first task was to define our role and our authority and what we could do and what actions we could take. And the answer to that is simple, that we were an advisory committee to advise the City Council in determining what a heritage asset is and to make recommendations how they should be handled. And when we talk about heritage, as Dick said, I was with the Little Claybell Homesteaders Museum for 20 years, and we were very much concerned about heritage. Why some of those books were written to establish the history of the area. Many people don't know that the people of the area are heritage assets, and their stories are valuable heritage assets, just the same as the buildings are. And in fact, the histories of some of the businesses that have been here and are no longer here is part of our heritage. And so, heritage is close to my heart. The last term of office, for some reason, the Heritage Committee seemed to have fallen by the wayside, and it has either been amalgamated with another committee or it's just not there. And the purpose of the Heritage Committee was to vent all of the issues that are related to heritage. And had that committee been in place, then this whole issue of the library being a heritage building would have gone through that committee first, and their recommendations to the council. But that didn't happen because the committee is not in place. So I have really three questions. One is, and I am assuming that the city has authority to sell the building. We already have the answer that it will remain to be a heritage building whether it's sold, and even if it's sold 2 or 3 times, if that heritage designation will absolutely be maintained. And I guess another third question is, I'm just wondering why the Heritage Committee wasn't maintained and continued. So I think that the comments that have been made about the value of the building is very valid. I think it can still be used, and if somebody can use it and maintain it as a heritage building, then I certainly don't have a problem with that. Thank you very much for listening, and sorry to have repeated some of the stuff that has already been discussed. Thank you.
Not a problem, Fred. I mean, this is a public meeting, we're looking for public comments. Your comments are very welcome there. Just one comment I want to make, and then we'll get on to any questions from the chat box. But the actual building, like you say, we'll stand for 50 years. The real reason we had problems with the library was the sheer weight of all the books that were in that building, putting pressure on the actual foundation of that building there. Without all that weight of the actual books in the building, it should stabilize it. We probably get away from all the cracks and the problems that we've had with the foundation in that building. So that's just a little bit of information there.
Yeah, that is what I was thinking. With all those books out, it's not going to sink, and if it could stay there, that would be just great. And that understanding would certainly help another buyer, knowing that it would still stand for many years without millions of dollars having to be spent.
Yes. Chris, also in this comment there, Chris?
Okay, well, so if I could just answer Claire's one question about how it succeeds from owner to owner, if that was ever the case. So it is, the designation is registered on title, and so it does pass on from along with the property whenever it is designated, whenever it's transferred. So there are 2 types of designation. A municipal designation, that's what the New Listed Library has, and there's also a provincial easement that is issued by the Ontario Heritage Trust. A good example of how it transfers from owner to owner is if you look locally at the Cobalt train station, which is not owned by the town of Cobalt, but was designated as a building of municipal heritage significance back, I think, in 1975. And then in 92 was designated by the province with a provincial easement in favor of the Ontario Heritage Trust. And those designations continue from owner to owner.
Okay, that's good. That answers my question. Thank you.
Thanks, Chris. Do you want to do the chat box questions first, and then we'll open up for comments and questions from the council? So, any questions in the chat box there, Shelley?
Yeah, sure. I have one from Dan Dawson. For the city to keep the newest good library building, I understand that by law they would have to make it accessible, which would require the front entrance to be altered, which would nullify the heritage building status. So the argument to save the building for heritage status reasons would be nullified when the city is forced to change the accessibility bylaw requiring all city-owned buildings to be accessible.
That building, we could put an accessible entrance into the back of the building without changing the front of that building as well, so that is a possibility.
Okay.
Yeah, next question.
I have a comment from Melissa Laporte. She's agreeing that it seems like the issue would benefit from more discussion and that it would be easier to facilitate when regular meetings can resume.
Okay, thank you.
And a comment from Rob Ritchie, maybe a committee to look at how to dispose of these historical sites to enhance the history of both downtowns.
Okay, thank you.
And that's it.
Okay. Well, are the members of council on the comments? Yeah, you had a question or comment?
I did, Your Worship, but my comment was around accessibility, and that was another area of concern for, for the library, and you did, talk a little bit about that. The other issue was the comment that was made about the historical designation. Is that going to stay forever? It is a municipal designation, so any future councils can change that decision as it goes forward, as far as I understand. So I don't believe that it's there forever, and we can make our decision, for our term of council, but then that can be changed in the future. And Chris, maybe you can speak to that. Thanks.
Chris?
So there is that opportunity that it could be changed. That would require a separate process. So you could theoretically have a new owner make a request to the council to repeal its bylaw that was registered on title, and that is a different public process that would have to be undertaken in order to remove the heritage designation. So right now it's registered on title and would succeed to each successor property owner. But Councillor Ferry is right, there could be, if there was a request, and there would be a different public process at that time.
Other questions, Councillor Brown?
Thank you, Mayor Kidd. Just quickly, I agree with Mr. Farrell that sometimes you have to give people a good kick in the backside in order to get them to participate. So I guess this is a swift kick. But for almost 2 years, the library board undertook a series of public meetings and online surveys and in-house surveys and discussions regarding hospital library services, and that's where the consolidation came about. It simply proved that the way we were running the library service no longer fit the needs of the municipality. So I'm quite proud of all the members of the library board for going through that process and going out to the public and finally making a decision. And based on that decision, here we are today with the 2 vacant buildings. In my own opinion, the Hillbury building was never a municipal building. I don't have a historic attachment to it. It's a little different with the Liskeard Public Library. It does have a heritage designation. There's 2 things you can go out of town and bring up. One is the New Liskeard Cubs. It doesn't matter where you go, everybody knows them. And the other is the New Liskeard Public Library. Everybody knows what it looks like. So even though we're only taking comments up until July 2nd, I hope that the council is going to take the time to seriously consider all the comments and all the opportunities that we have for the building. That just because we're only taking public comments up to June 2nd doesn't mean we have to make a decision right away. I'm hoping maybe by, late summer, early fall, we can start to say, okay, what do we really want to do with this building based on the input that we've gathered? So let's take our time and do this right. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Councilman MacArthur.
Yeah, there's just one thing that I want to make very straight here. Both Councillor LaFerriere and Councillor Whalen kept us up to date every minute, month, hour of the time, what was going on. And when I hear comments or accusations that this was a secret and this was a rush job, that's not true. This council, mayor and council, were told what was going on all the time, and we were there to listen, and we had to make some decisions. So this was not a rush job or a sneaky job. This was the right job as far as listening, acting, and what we did in the long run with the new Liskeard Library.
Councilor Jennings?
Yes, if I may, I'm just going to step outside the box for a minute, and I understand that we certainly had a lot of good presentations this evening, and we'll have to give some thought to some things. I'm coming at you as president of the Legion Branch 33, and we share those lots together. I understand from the conversation and what I've learned that it's selling the building, and just would like to be kept up on how much land is going to be taken, if any, away from what the Legion enjoy now to celebrate and remember our veterans. And they also have great historic area attachments to this area, and the Legion are quite impressed with our cenotaph, and we wouldn't like to lose too many of the land that we have there now. Thank you.
Yeah, I'm sure that somebody's going to check the land plan to see exactly survey distances, what actually belongs to the library, what belongs to the cenotaph. So we'll definitely look into that. Other questions from council?
Chris has a comment.
Jeff, you had a comment? Or?
No, Chris has got his hand up. He wants
to speak. Sorry.
Just on the issue of the property line, Logan did arrange for Jeremy LaFleur, our engineering clerk, to go out and plot the lot lines. There would be a small green strip on the west side of the building. So we have some visuals now. We didn't have time to get them into this presentation, but on June 2nd we can show you a visual with the lot lines sort of plotted out, so you can see how much space would be go with the building, how much land space would go with the building.
Okay, thanks, Chris. Thank you. Any questions in the chat box, Shelley?
No other comments.
Okay. Any last comments from council? If not, then I'll declare this part of the public meeting to be closed, and the council will give more consideration to all the comments that made tonight. I appreciate all the people commenting tonight there, and we'll look at additional comments up until June the 2nd, and like Danny's saying there as well, that we will be considering this all summer, I imagine. So, Councilor Hewitt, you had a last comment before we move on? Your microphone is muted, or there we go.
Yeah, there we go. My apology. Yeah, just in regards to some of the comments, really appreciate, obviously when we have this many individuals speaking up, we have an obligation to address and meet some of those concerns. And one of the things Councillor MacArthur mentioned, it had nothing to do with the fact that anything was trying to be slid past anybody, but not everybody's on social media. And many of our fine citizens You know, they need that consultation and back and forth. They built this city. And again, it goes back to that cohesiveness of our, our downtown core and the community. And that library is part of that unity. So I really encourage us to not only continue our conversation up to June 2nd, but have that deferred until we have that open public dialogue and forum where people can come out, and some of our patrons that are not so interested in or have the capability perhaps for these type of calls or putting in their comments, have their ability to raise their voice and concerns and vision.
Thank you very much. I know there was a lot of public meetings. I attended a lot with the library board there as well, and mainly needed that little kick in the pants to get more people out there, because we didn't have that great of attendance at some of the public meetings. We definitely we're listening to what people have to say there. So we'll move on to item number 7.3, 673 Browning Street. And the purpose of this public meeting is to present council and the public details related to the proposed disposition of the land being 673 Browning Street. And the meeting also allows the public to provide comments on the proposed disposition prior to council making a decision. So I now declare this to be an open public meeting and request the clerk of the lodge to outline the details of the proposed disposition here. So, Logan, thank you.
Thank you, Your Worship. So the background related to 673 Browning Street. So it is located in, again, 673 Browning Street, for the former town of Halebury. At the November 5th, 2019 regular council meeting, council approved staff to proceed with the notice of vesting following an unsuccessful tax sale. So the property was tendered for sale for 4 consecutive weeks in the Temiskaming Speaker, September 4th, 11th, 18th, and 25th, and once in the Ontario Gazette on September 14th, with tenders closing on October 2nd, and there was an unsuccessful tax sale, so no bids or tenders were received. There is a derelict residential building located on the property. The file was circulated to staff, and no concerns were received for the potential disposition. One comment was received from the fire department, commenting that an order was issued to secure the building in 2018 due to unauthorized entries. The second slide just outlines the details with respect to the property that was also included in the tax sale notice, noting the assessment value of 2020 of $95,000. The treasurer has filed a 357 to change the assessment class, and also to reduce the assessment value to reflect the condition of the property. The third slide is an aerial view of the property fronting on Browning Street. The property is equipped with water and sanitary services that are available at the property line and has year-round access. For additional information, no public comments have been received at the date of this posting or as 4:30 today. Notice was given with respect to this public notice in the community bulletin as well as on the city's website. For the next steps, which would be contingent on public input, depending on comments received this evening, staff would recommend the disposition of the subject property in accordance with the city's disposal bylaw 2015-160, and that staff would prepare a follow-up report at the June 2nd, 2020 regular meeting for council consideration.
Thank you, Logan.
Thank you.
Are there any members of the public want to speak, have input on this particular issue? Any comments in the chat box?
No comments in the chat box.
Any members of council that would like to speak at this point? Seeing none, I'll now declare this public meeting to be closed, and the council will give due consideration to any of the comments that we received before June the 2nd. So, moving on, we've reached our first question and answer period. Is anything the public has got a question in our chat box for a regular question and answer period?
Not seeing any.
Okay. We've already gone through the presentations. Number 10 is the communications. 10A is a letter from the Temiskaming Health Unit regarding the consultation on a new Ontario poverty reduction strategy, 2020-0430. It's received for our information. 10B is a letter from the Ministry of Environment, Conservation and Parks regarding the notice of project for Ford Creek Dam Rehabilitation Project. 20. 10C is a letter from Sarah Kim, the town clerk for the town of Grimsby, regarding support for the commercial rent assistance program, and that's received for information. 10D is a letter from AMO Communications regarding the COVID-19 update. Emergency orders extended to May 19th. The Chief Medical Officer of Health giving direction on seasonal residences and more businesses to open up. So that was received on May the 6th. That's received for information. 10E is a letter from AMO Communications regarding the COVID-19 update regarding pandemic pay information. That's received for information. 10F is another letter from AMO Communications regarding the COVID-19 update, municipal financial stabilization needed, safe reopening, guidelines on the webinar, and the long-term care review coming. That was received on May the 8th for information. 10G is a letter from AMO Communications or email regarding COVID-19 update regarding child care and enforcement reporting and provincial parks. That was received on May the 11th. 10H is a letter from AMO Communications regarding the COVID-19 update for emergency period extending and the building code amendments. That was received on May the 12th. That's received for information. And lastly, 10I, another AMO Communication regarding the continued fiscal stabilization request plus the reopening start. That was received on May the 14th. So all those items received for information. I've got a motion moved by Council MacArthur, second by Council Hewitt. Be resolved that City Council agrees to deal with communication items 10A through 10I according to the agenda references. Any comments on those? Yes, Council Rowan?
Yeah, thank you, Mayor Kidd. I just wanted to comment on item A from the Temiskaming Health Unit. In fact, the letter was signed by yourself. It has to do with the consultation on the new Ontario poverty reduction strategy. I just want to say it's a great paper, and I think it's actually something that should come back to council, and we should be looking at showing our, at least our municipal support behind that.
Thank you, sir. We can do that for sure. So, other comments? If not, anybody opposed to that motion? I consider that carried. Item number 11 is the committees of council, community and regional. Like a motion moved by Councilor Whalen, second by Councilor Foley. Be it resolved the following minutes be accepted for information. A, the minutes of the Temiskaming Health Unit Board of Health meeting that was held on March the 4th, 2020. So, any comments on that? Anybody opposed to that motion? We'll consider that carried as well. Item number 12, the committees of council of the internal departments. That kind of motion moved by Councilor Jelly, second by Councilor Hewitt. Be it resolved the following minutes be accepted for information. A, the minutes of the building maintenance committee meeting held on April 30th, 2020. B, the minutes of the corporate services committee meeting held on April 30th, 2020. C, the minutes of the public works committee meeting held on April 30th, 2020. And lastly, the minutes of the transit committee meeting held on April 29th, 2020. Any comments on those 4 sets of minutes? Anybody opposed to that motion? We'll consider that carried. Any reports from members of council tonight? Councilor MacArthur.
Yeah, I have a couple of issues tonight, Mayor, and the first one is because of the annual AMO meeting being canceled in Ottawa in August and having a virtual meeting with all those still planning to participate, I decided not to take part, as Councillor Whalen will be in attendance to represent the city and as president of FNOM. which will save $800 for registration fees to the city, plus, of course, hotel rooms and mileage and meals and costs per diem and everything else that goes with it. So I'm just going to step down, and Councillor Whalen will be definitely attending this virtual meeting. If you didn't hear our Premier today, Mr. Ford made some changes, and I have Matt right now, our Recreation Director, to give you the action and what is going on with some venues that were previously closed by the Ontario government. And I think it's a good news story coming up.
You were using that piece of paper as your mask there, Mike? I heard that you were very famous for your mask that you've been wearing lately.
No mask. I think Matt's here. Matt's somewhere around there.
Yes, thank you, Councilor MacArthur, Mayor, and Council. So, as mentioned today, the province of Ontario sent out some information. It's an extending of the emergency orders. Included in that, they also included some more reopenings of outdoor recreational amenities that weren't expected to be included. So I'll read exactly what it says for your own information. It says, as part of this initial stage, the government is permitting the reopening of some outdoor recreational amenities, including outdoor sports facilities and multi-use fields, off-leash dog areas, and outdoor picnic sites, benches, and shelters in parks and recreation areas, effective as of Tuesday, May 19th, 2020. Outdoor playgrounds, play structures and equipment, fitness equipment, public swimming pools, splash pads, and similar outdoor water facilities will remain closed until later stages of the province's reopening plan. Included in those later on in this document, they define outdoor sports facilities and multi-use fields as including things like soccer fields and ball diamonds. And further, they also allow the opening of BMX parks and skate parks. So my department is ready to reopen these facilities as of tomorrow, unless council would prefer to direct otherwise. But I wanted to at least update, just because this is brand new information as of earlier today, and it's not reflected within the report that I submitted for consideration about trails, pathways, and that's going to be discussed later on. Thank you very much.
Yeah, I think we just have to make sure our staff are ready for some of these changes as well before we actually open them up. For Councilor Allen, comment?
Yeah, just a couple of comments. First one for Public Works actually is I haven't seen the vehicle in operation, but I have seen the new spray patcher, and I've seen some of the work that it has done. It's quite impressive. So looking forward to actually seeing it in action and seeing what it can do for the municipality. The other issue I just wanted to mention quickly for council's benefit, and if the mayor or the fire chief is on the morning chat, I spent some time with Minister Jakubowski, and one of the things we were discussing last week is the higher above normal risk for forest fires in northeastern Ontario. So we have reopened for pit fires and that within the municipality. I think it should be mentioned that there needs to be extra caution taken this year, as there's simply not the moisture in the bush and whatnot that we normally have. So we've been rated above normal for forest fires this year. So anytime we get that message out, we should. Thank you.
Thanks, Councilor. I know we've been talking about rain in the last week, 10 days, and we haven't got any, so it is blowing dry up there. So, Councilor MacArthur.
Yes, one question I have, and I don't know if it's supposed to be the recreation department's total responsibility, but I do have a concern about the supervision of distancing at the skateboard park. And, you know, I mean, we talked last week or in a special meeting about people that were on the, say, the trail, distancing themselves, and if they don't, who takes care of that, and fines and all that. I don't want to open up a can of worms, but I think it's only fair. The public's going to wonder, can I take my little boy there or a teenager's go there? Is there going to be distancing applied, and I just can't see recreation staff being there all day waiting.
I think we're going to put the responsibility back on the parents and the kids themselves. I mean, if you're a teenager, you're going to have to take responsibility for yourself and make sure you are social distancing. And the parents, the younger kids, are going to have to make sure that they're there. So there is social distancing going on. Councilor Jelly, you have a comment? Well?
Yeah, I have a great concern about that. I mean, the other thing that we're not mentioning right now is they did not lift the 5-person limit of gatherings. That skate park, a beautiful park, and I mean, I'd love to have it open for the young people and what have you. But not only distancing, now we're not. The government seemed to be encouraging more than 5 people at a time because you know how busy that park is. As far as the green spaces, I don't have issue with, you know, with green spaces opening up for people for exercising and what have you. The other thing that they were quite emphatic about is that your playgrounds remain closed. My opinion is the skate park is very similar to a playground, and they're talking about smooth top equipment being touched by people and then, you know, being touched by somebody else. They're putting the onus on the towns or the cities. If they're opening these things or opening washrooms or whatever, they have to provide cleaning, but make sure that these things are wiped down. So where does our responsibility end here? It's, you know, it is our facility, and if we're going to encourage use of it, what are we going to do to protect the people that are using that? And they did say open picnic areas. Does that include the Richelieu, I believe it's the Richelieu Club that have the picnic areas along the waterfront? If so, who's going to look after cleaning those up after somebody's used them and stuff like that? I'm totally dismayed at this government allowing that. I'm very proud of this government for the actions they've taken so far, but I don't get the correlation that they're putting on between soccer and ball fields and skate parks. Just my opinion.
No, I think as a council, we have the right to decide what we actually want to open and what we want to maintain there. So, I mean, I'm with you, Doug, that we have to look at the skateboard park. We have to look at the Richelieu picnic tables, the playground equipment. I mean, those kind of things, I think we've got the right to maintain that they're staying closed at this point. Councilor Jelly?
Sure. Yes, I agree with you, Mayor Kidd, and I think it should go back to recreation for a meeting, and you know, perhaps sooner than later. I'm not suggesting that you call a meeting, but I mean, it is something of urgency. I believe word's going to travel that the premier said they can open them, so I think we're going to get a little bit of flashback from the fact the skate park's not open, but I certainly exercise caution on that one. Thank you.
Councilor Morales, you have a question?
Yeah, I realize the message is a little convoluted, I guess, for lack of a better word, but these, whenever there's an opening announced, these places are allowed to open so long as they meet the criteria on the provincial website. So if we don't feel we can meet those criteria, we don't have to open them. It's not it says they may open. It doesn't say they must open.
Thank you, sir. Any other comments, Councilor Burger?
Thank you, Your Worship. I struggle with, you know, larger centers which have much more population than us, and they're opening these facilities, and you know, we continue to operate public transit, where you're in an enclosed space, and social distancing is a challenge. And mental health is a huge part of what's going on here as well. And I think that, you know, number one, if we're talking about, you know, social distancing, the education and the communication has been out there. It's been fairly consistent. And if I look at the impact that we've seen within our municipality, I think that everybody's been responsible. And I think if there is abuse, then it, you know, from an enforcement perspective, whether that's the bylaw or the OPP, you know, let's communicate. But to keep things closed, I'm not in favor of. And, especially when it is, getting exercise, getting out. I understand the risk component to that, but parents and us as adults, we need to have, some trust and making sure that, we talk about the facilities that are there. There's a reason why they're there. And, hey, if the province is opening these up, and if we're meeting the conditions that are in there, I have a real difficulty in voting against keeping those closed. Just my thoughts. Thank you.
Yeah, I mean, this was just announced today, so I think we have to maybe have a quick recreation meeting and discuss this with the recreation committee and get a recommendation back to council real quick to decide what we're doing there. Maybe, I guess Chris and I, once we get a recommendation from our recreation committee, Chris and I can actually issue an order with our directive there as well. So maybe we'll do that right now in the next few days, get a recreation meeting put together. So, Councilor Whalen?
Yeah, just quickly, another announcement today is the closure of schools until September. So as far as a lot of these kids are concerned, and it leads up to Jeff's comments, as far as they're concerned, they're on summer holidays now, so you're not going to keep them out of the skate park whether we make an announcement or not.
Any other reports from members of council tonight? If not, any notice of motions? If not, we'll jump into new business. 15A is the memo 008 2020 CS, the 2020 budget. And I got a motion moved by Councilor McCarthy, seconded by Councilor Ferrier. Be it resolved, the Council of the City of St. Charles hereby acknowledge the receipt of memo 008 2020 CS. And the Council directs the Treasurer to prepare the water sewer rate bylaw and the 2020 budget bylaw for consideration at the June 2nd, 2020 regular council meeting. Questions, comments? Seeing none, anybody oppose this motion? It says motion carried. 15B is a Administrative Report CS 019 2020, the mini cut land lease agreement. And I got a motion moved by Councilor Whalen, second by Councilor Hewitt. Be resolved that the Council of the City of St. Charles acknowledge receipt of Administrative Report CS 019 2020. The Council directs staff to repeal bylaw 2018-093 and the necessary bylaws enter into a 10-year lease agreement with Kyle and Maria Overton for the use of land located at the spur line for the operation of the Elizabeth Water Cut Mini Cut for consideration at the May 19, 2020 regular council meeting. And also that council directs staff to amend the bylaw 2019-155 to include a renewal clause of 5 years in the lease agreement with Kyle and Maria Overton for the use of the spur line concession for consideration at the May 19, 2020 regular council meeting. Any questions, comments? Councilor Hewitt?
Yes, Your Worship. Oh, it's not okay.
You're on.
I'd like to be removed as seconded for this particular motion. I didn't appreciate the way things were handled when this lease first came into place and at that time, and now we're moving up to a 10-year lease, and the previous tenant had worked very hard at that particular location, and I don't think that that in all fairness that he didn't have the right to have that lease supported again. So for that reason, I would like my name removed from this particular motion.
Okay, that's done. Anybody want to second this motion? Councilor Ferrier? Any other comments at this point? If not, anybody opposed? Do you want to record a vote if you are opposed? Councilor Hewitt? You're opposed? You want to record a vote?
Sure.
Logan?
Two. Councilor Hewitt.
Opposed?
Councilor Foley.
In favor.
Councilor Jelly.
In favor.
Councilor Ferrier,
In favor.
Councilor MacArthur,
In favor?
Councilor Whalen,
In favor.
Mayor Kidd.
In favor.
Your worship, the motion carries.
Thank you very much. Moving on, 15C, Administrative Report CS 020-2020, website accessibility upgrades. I got a motion moved by Councilor Foley, second by Councilor Jelly. Be it resolved that Council of the Sage Shores acknowledge receipt of Administrative Report CS 020-2020. And the council directs staff to prepare the necessary bylaw in agreement with eSolutions Group Limited to award the website accessible upgrades and redesign as detailed in the request for proposals CS RFP 001-2020 for a total upsettlement of $17,500 plus applicable taxes for consideration at the May 19, 2020 regular council meeting. Any comments? Anybody opposed to this motion? I'll consider that motion carried. 15D is memo 001-2020 PPP, the amendment to the fireworks bylaw. I got a motion moved by Councilor Ferrier, second by Councilor Whalen, be it resolved that Council of the City of Shores hereby acknowledge receipt of memo 001-2020 PPP. And the council directs staff to prepare the necessary bylaw to amend bylaw 2009-161 as amended, being a bylaw to regulate the sale, display, and discharge of fireworks and firecrackers in the City of Shores, to restrict the discharge of fireworks during a municipal fire ban or during a provincial restricted fire zone declaration for consideration at the May 19, 2020 regular council meeting. Any comments? Anybody oppose this motion? Seeing none, we'll consider that motion carried. 15E is memo 002-2020 PPP, the waiver of fees. And I got a motion moved by Councilor Hewitt, second by Councilor MacArthur. Be resolved that Council of the City of Shores hereby acknowledge receipt of memo 002-2020 PPP. And the council hereby agrees to waive the fees collected for open air burning permits and false alarm response fees for 2020, as outlined in bylaw 2012-039, being a bylaw to adopt the scheduled department of user and service charges for the City of Shores. And the council further agrees that no refunds will be issued for permits that have been issued for 2020 or for fees collected for false alarm responses. Any comments? Councilor Whalen?
Yeah, my apologies for not being as up to date on this one as I should be, but earlier we stated that if you have a 2019 fire permit, it'll just continue. So is that going forward, or
Yes.
is it 2019?
Yeah, that's what, if you've got a 2019 permit, you just carry on in 2020 with that permit. Until we open the offices, we're not issuing any new permits.
Are we at least going to ask the residents that never had a permit before to notify the fire hall if they are putting in a pit, just so they're aware of where they're located?
Yeah, Chief Utley, I think, because we had a little discussion with him as well, that he is taking applications for new fire pits that he will actually go out there, him and Steve will go and visit the new fire pit.
Yeah, so long as our photo on record, that's what I was concerned about. Thank you.
Yeah. Okay, thanks. Any other comments? Chief Utley, did you have any comment at all? I assume you're listening.
Thank you, Your Worship. Yeah, I just mentioned that pending council's decision on this, what we're presenting tonight, we have put in place a process where the 2019 permits will carry on, and I've been fielding calls most of the day today, explaining some of the rules that they have to follow. As far as new permits, anyone requiring a new permit, because there will be some residents that will require one, they can contact our office, and we put in some social distancing processes for our fire prevention officer to go out, do the inspection, take that photo, and issue a permit should it comply with our rules and regulations.
And there won't be any fees for that new permit, Tim?
Provided council passes this resolution, you're correct.
Right. Chris, comment?
Just quickly, perhaps Chief Utley could also expand on this a bit. That we have had, so when the announcement came out on Friday, we were really not prepared for that announcement. And really, it would have been nice if it had been announced on Thursday when all of the other announcements were made. However, there have been some issues that Tim may want to elaborate on, where people felt it was kind of a free-for-all, and they could just go out and start having a backyard campfire. There still are regulations that we have in place within the city, such as daytime burning. I know our fire department responded, I believe Tim told me today, to at least 3 incidences where people were burning outside of the prescribed times. And so people still need to be cautious when having backyard fires. We don't want to take away valuable time of our volunteer firefighters to deal with issues because people are not following existing guidelines that are already in place as far as burning within the city.
Yeah, that's correct, Chris. We did respond to 3 calls, which I consider not too bad, given that we issued over 800 permits last year. We fielded a lot of calls today with people having questions, and we're trying to get some messaging out. I certainly worked with the Director of Corporate Services, putting it on Facebook. We've been putting it in the speaker, but we still have those folks that don't pay too much attention to those. So we're gonna work on getting the messaging out about the regulations, because I don't think what people understand, particularly with COVID-19, is that it is a false alarm. There is a cost to the ratepayer for our volunteers to go out. There's a cost to our volunteers to leave their families. But with COVID-19, we're taking extra measures to decontaminate and sanitize and things like that. So there's extra time that it takes for us to do that. So we're hopeful that putting the processes that council's considering tonight is going to be helpful for them. But we're really hopeful that they'll follow the rules and regulations outlined on the permits that they've been issued. They're on the back of the permit, and for the most part, our residents do a fairly good job of that. I'd also make a note, and I think Councillor Whalen, you mentioned it a little earlier. Right now, our fire hazard is high, and at the office of the fire prevention officer and myself, we're monitoring it really closely, because if our weather continues to be as nice as it is outside, we're expecting that to go up to extreme. So we're looking at the calls we're having to field and the fire hazard. We may have to consider a fire ban down the road, but hopefully it doesn't come to that. We're monitoring it daily.
Thanks, Chief Utley. I know it's talking 23, 24 degrees the next 3 or 4 days there, and hot and dry, so we want to keep it an eye on that. So, any other comments on this motion? Anybody opposed to this motion? Seeing none, we'll consider that one carried. 15F is memo 009 2020 PW, cancellation of the orange drop event. And I got a motion moved by Councilor Jelly, second by Councilor Foley. Be it resolved that Council of the City of Charlotte hereby acknowledge receipt of memo 009 2020 PW, and the Council approves the Public Works Committee's recommendation to cancel the June 6, 2020 orange drop event until 2021. Direct staff to advertise the rescheduled event. Any comments? Anybody opposed to this motion? I'll consider that motion carried. Thank you. 15G is memo 010 2020 PW, the Hillbilly Landfill Operations Update. And I got a motion moved by Councilor LaFerrier, second by Councilor Foley. Be resolved that Council of the City of Charlotte hereby acknowledge receipt of memo 010 2020 PW, and the Council approves the staff's recommendation to open the Hillbilly Landfill with normal operations with physical distancing in place effective May the 20th, 2020. Questions, comments? Yes, Councilor Jelly.
Yeah, just a question perhaps you can answer. I made my comments about how well the landfill site was being handled when they opened for the amnesty weeks. I'm just curious if they're going to keep the second employee out there longer to assist with the distancing and the direction of traffic in and out of the landfill area.
Director Walsh or Chris?
Yes, Mayor Kidd, through you to Councillor Jelly. It is my understanding that that will play out day by day, depending on how busy it is. Activity through the latter part of the amnesty days wasn't as busy as it was for the first week. The traffic didn't amount to as much, and we were watching that daily to make sure that it is properly staffed.
Thank you. Any other comments? Anybody opposed to this motion? That motion is carried. 15H is Administrative Report PW 015-2020, the transition of the Blue Box to full and producer responsibility. And I got a motion moved by Councilor MacArthur, seconded by Councilor Jelly, be resolved the Council of the City of Centralia acknowledge receipt of the Administrative Report PW 015-2020. And the Council agrees the best time for the City of Centralia to transition the Blue Box program full producer responsibility is January 1st, 2025, based on the expiration dates within the collection and processing contracts. And the Council agrees to consider providing collection services to the producers once the Blue Box wind-up plan and the regulations are developed. And the Council agrees any questions regarding the resolution be directed to the Technical and Environmental Compliance Coordinator for the City of Shores. And the Council directs staff to forward this resolution to the Associated Municipalities of Ontario and the Ontario Ministry of Environment, Conservation and Parks. Any comments? Anybody opposed to this motion? Seeing none, I'll consider that motion carried. Steve can carry on there. 15I, Administrative Report RS 005-2020, the COVID-19 trails, past and walkways closures. And I got a motion moved by Councilor Foley, seconded by Councilor Hewitt. Be it resolved the Council of the City of Centralia acknowledge receipt of Administrative Report RS 005-2020. And the Council directs staff to remove all notices of closure for trails, paths, and walkways within the municipality. Provide public health notices regarding the physical distancing at these facilities and monitor usage to ensure the public is following recommended public health practices. Comments? Yes, Councilor Perrier. You want to make a comment?
No, just in total support, that's all.
Okay. Anybody opposed to this motion? Yes, question, comment?
And just for clarity, the skateboard park, picnic shelters, you want us to wait for a recreation committee meeting, or, cause I think Matt is ready to go either way, but I know there was a lot of discussion and different views on that, so I just wanna make sure we have clarity if those will remain closed at this time till the recreation committee meets, or do we go ahead and open those facilities?
What do you think, Council? I mean, we're moving along pretty quickly here for what we were a week ago. So, Councilor Perrier?
I'm in favor of opening them up. And I think if we're saying we don't have the resources to enforce it, then, how are you going to stop people from using it? And honestly, they're being opened up across the province. So I don't know why we would be different or unique.
Other comments, Councilor MacArthur?
Yes, well, the only reason that I brought it up about the distancing is because I think it's going to lay on the responsibility of the recreation folks. And I don't think we've got a lot of people that can go to the skateboard park and police it. And I don't think we have bylaw officers half a day. Or I just feel that somebody's got to take responsibility. And I hear some councillors say, it's up to the person to stay away from the other person. But I just don't want somebody to play the blame game and the finger going at the recreation department. So that's why I mentioned it, because somebody's going to have to be responsible or they're gonna blame somebody. And if it's the city in general, but I just didn't want to see one department or one particular, two people get blamed because they don't have enough supervision there.
Councilor Jelly?
Yeah, I expressed some opposition to this also, but my opposition is in the line of responsibility. And if there's no responsibility on the city to make sure there's no more than 5 people in there, that's fine. Why aren't we opening the playgrounds? The equipment in the playgrounds is not a whole lot different than the equipment in the skate park area when you're, people wandering around and touching it. So I'm shocked by this opening so quick. If there's guidelines, fine, make sure that we're following them. The health unit here have guidelines, make sure that we're following them. I'm just concerned, and I stated earlier, I'd love to see it open, but I just want to make sure that we are protected. That's my concern.
Other comments? If anyone, Councilor Jelly or Foley. Jesse?
Yeah, I'm along with Jeff. I'm good. I mean, if Matt thinks that we have the staff and can get these ready, I can see why skateboard parks would be different than playgrounds. Most of these people at the skate parks are on their own equipment, their own bikes, their own skateboards, rollerblades, scooters, whatever. Whereas at a playground, it's swing sets, it slides, kids are climbing on everything. So I really don't have an issue with us opening up the skate park.
Any other comments? Say we want to make a friendly amendment at this point, or proceed with the existing resolution?
Your worship, I think Chris wants to make a comment.
Yes, Chris.
So I suggest this as a recommendation that they are allowed to be open now, and as Councilor Whelan said, they may be open. I think Matt has a plan in place that we feel we can open them. We have an education plan in place, and I think we all as a community have our own responsibility as well to work together to ensure our community safety. And if there are abuses, we always have that option to close certain facilities down again if there are issues that we feel are posing public health risks. So that may be an option that we proceed, open them at this point in time, and then if there are abuses or there are public health risks that are beyond our capacity to address, that we could look at that time at closing certain facilities again. That may be an option that you want us to look at. I just want to make sure the rec staff have clear direction tomorrow on what's opening and what isn't open.
Just hearing no friendly amendments, I guess okay, we got, who wants to go first? Councilor LaFerrier.
Sure, yeah, I'd make the friendly amendment that we just open everything up. And Chris, you make a really good point. And no different than what the province is going to do where they've opened up some businesses. As soon as there's abuse, they're dealing with them and shutting them down individually as well. So we have that flexibility to say, hey, we're going to close this because it's being abused. So, yeah.
We have a seconder for that type friendly amendment. Councilor MacArthur?
Sure.
Any comments on the amendment that we're going to open up all the different recreation facilities other than the playground equipment and the pool fitness center? So I'll consider that. Anybody oppose that amendment? I'll consider that amendment carried. The original motion is was moved by Councilor Foley, second by Councilor Hewitt. Does anybody oppose the original motion as well? If not, anybody oppose that motion? We'll consider that carried, and we'll let Matt monitor the outcome of all this. So, moving on to item 15J, Administrative Report RS 006 2020, the Elevator Arena dehumidifier replacement. And a motion moved by Councilor Jelly, second by Councilor LaFerrier. Be it resolved the council of the state of insurance acknowledge receipt of Administrative Report RS 006 2020, The council directs staff to prepare the necessary bylaw to enter into an agreement with CIMCO Refrigeration for the replacement of the dehumidifier at the Shelley Herbert Sherry Aurora Arena, as detailed in the request for quotations RFQ 002-2020 at a total upset cost of $30,000 plus applicable taxes for consideration at the May 19th, 2020 regular council meeting. Any comments? Anybody oppose this motion? We'll consider that carried. Moving on to item number 16, the bylaws. We got a draft resolution moved by Councillor Hewitt, second by Councillor Rowland. Be it resolved that bylaw 2020-051 being a bylaw to authorize a lease agreement with Kyle and Maria Overton and for the operation of the Temiskaming Shore Waterfront Mini Pot for the period of May 1st, 2020 through to December 31st, 2029. Bylaw 2020-052 being a bylaw to amend bylaw 2019-155 as amended to enter into a lease agreement with Kyle and Maria Overton for the operation of the Spurline concession at the waterfront, along the waterfront, and bylaw 2020-053 being a bylaw to authorize an agreement with East Solutions Group Limited for the website redesign and development for the city of Temiskaming Shores. Bylaw 2020-054 being a bylaw to amend bylaw 2009-161 to regulate the sale, display, and discharge of fireworks and firecrackers in the city of Temiskaming Shores. And lastly, bylaw 2020-055 being a bylaw to authorize an agreement with CIMCO Refrigeration for the dehumidifier replacement at the Hillbury Arena. These bylaws will be introduced and given first and second reading. Any comments? Councilor MacArthur.
Yes, the first two bylaws, I believe Councillor Hewitt was against them, so you can take her name out and put me in.
Councilor Hewitt, are you in the same position or you want to withdraw your motion, remove that motion? Or withdraw your name?
Yeah.
Point of process, your worship.
Yeah.
Yes. All right, Councilor Kelly.
All you're doing by seconding a motion is putting the motion on the table. You do have the choice of how you want to vote for it or whether you want to call for a recorded vote. It's not committing you to a yes or on a motion.
Yes, thank you, sir.
Yes, thank you, sir. In regards to this, the bylaws have already passed, so I don't see the need for my name to be removed.
Okay, we're just voting on the bylaws right now, so we'll proceed. Anybody got any questions, comments on these 5 bylaws? Anybody opposed to these bylaws? Seeing none, we'll consider that motion carried. Draft resolution moved by Councilor MacArthur, second by Councilor Jelly. Be resolved that bylaw 2020-051, 52, 53, 54, and 55 be given third and final reading, be signed by the mayor clerk and the clerk will seal and affixed thereto. Anybody opposed to this motion? Seeing none, I'll consider that motion carried. Schedule of council meetings. The next regular meeting will be held on Tuesday, June the 2nd at 6 p.m. And after that, second meeting in June is June the 16th at 6 p.m. So I assume these are still be virtual unless council decides to go back to council chambers and start actually do our council meeting in public again there. Second question and answer period. Is there any questions in the chat box? First of all,
No questions, Mayor Kidd.
any questions from members of council at this point? Councilor Jelly. Councilor Jelly.
Yes, sir. Speaking of the next meeting in June 2nd, are we into summer or retire?
Some people already are.
Jeff is very concerned about it.
Since school is out for the summer, we're going to be in summer retirement. So,
thank you. We usually do June, July, and August.
Not a question, your worship, but a comment.
Yes, sir.
And you know, last year, the year before, we talked about our membership fees to different organizations. And you know, we go through the issues that we have gone through with COVID-19. while the communication and the support we received from AMO and FENOM is worth their weight in gold. So, clearly we made the right decision in supporting those organizations because they're definitely supporting us and helping us with the education and the communication to really help us, support our citizens as we go through this. So I just want to say thank you.
Between AMO and FNOM and the health unit and DSAB, we've got great support there and great direction from all those groups there, so I appreciate that. Any other questions, comments at this point? If not, we've got a closed session. We've got a motion moved by Councilor Perry, seconded by Councilor Foley. The council agrees to convene in closed session in a couple minutes, 8 o'clock on the nose, I guess, to discuss the following matters. A, the adoption of the May 5th, 2020 closed session minutes, and B, under section 239 2B of the Municipal Act 2001, the personnel matter about an identifiable individual, the human resources update. Close that motion. We'll just close off the actual video there. Brad can do that. So that motion carried. So we'll reconvene in a couple minutes here.